Some people are just too damn stupid to appreciate the value of what they have until they don't. They later wail about how unjust it is that it's impossible to undo the damage they did that has cost them, and their trusting victim, everything. True justice is that their suffering is tenfold when they're finally forced to face the reality that the word impossible means what it means. When Jack, 26, and Denise, 23, realized that for more than 3 months neither of them had dated anyone but each other, they'd decided to find a nicer apartment than either of them had, take the best furniture from each of their old apartments, and move it and themselves into the new apartment. For nearly 2 years, everything was perfect. Jack and Denise got along like a couple who were meant for each other, growing closer over time. Jack was a happy man. He loved Denise, and her actions made him believe that she loved him too. Each of them had a lot of friends who'd all become friends and acquaintances with each other, and that's how it'd been for the last couple of years. When Charles Malcolm Richardson, shoved his way into their lives and started putting his "I don't give a fuck whose girl you are" moves on Denise. Jack saw and picked up on it at a couple of parties and said something about it to Denise, but she made excuses, like he's just a really friendly guy and he's like that with everybody, Jack. Or, stop being so insecure, and the old standby. You know you're the only man I love. Holding her at arm's length, Jack looked into her eyes and said, "Listen to me, Denise. The guy is a snake. He's gaming you. I'm telling you plain and simple. He's angling to get into your. You do what you want, Denise, but you damned well remember that I warned you. Also, remember this. I don't cheat and I won't stay with anyone who cheats on me, and I don't take prisoners." At that, he released his hold on her shoulders and left the party. Jack, 3 years older, much more experienced and world-wise, knew better. Charlie wasn't like what she said to him at all. In fact, when no one else was paying close attention, he was arrogant and disrespectful toward him. In fact, oftentimes, quite recently, he'd bordered on contemptuous. Since they'd had no personal confrontations, Jack's natural suspicions forced him to realize that something had happened to give Charlie reason to act and feel contemptuous toward him. Instinctively knowing what it most likely was, Jack had gone on high alert, but without proof, he hadn't made any accusations to Denise. Jack, a former Special Forces member, seriously considered giving Charlie a once-in-a-lifetime private and final lesson in respect and social etiquette, but he knew that, if he were caught, his lethal skills would put him in prison, so he just smiled and, in a quiet voice, told Charlie to go fuck himself and to keep his distance from Denise. 6'3" Charlie just snorted, looked down at Jack, dismissively, then laughed out loud as he turned and walked away. Jack never said a word to Denise, but by her demeanor it was soon clear to Jack that she knew of his confrontation with Charlie. Knowing that there was only one way that she could know of it, Jack felt the sadness of loss grow and spread like a fungus. A couple of weeks had gone by since the incident with Charlie when Denise gave Jack a sad tale about getting a call at work, that her Aunt Doris was sick and had asked her to go spend the coming weekend with her. Denise wasn't much of an actress, and from the nervous excitement in her demeanor, Jack was sure that her actual plan was to spend the weekend shacked up with and fucking good time Charlie, the guy who'd been hitting on her and is very likely already fucking her. That explained his blatant disrespect for Jack, her unsuspecting fiancé. When Jack asked Denise for her aunt's phone number to be able to call and talk with her, Denise looked reluctant and then told him that Aunt Doris didn't have a phone. When he followed up by asking how she knew that her aunt was sick, she hesitated for just a second, before mumbling that her aunt had had her neighbor call to ask Denise to come and spend the weekend with her. Considering the tension there'd been between the two of them during the previous 2 weeks, there was no way that Denise shouldn't have been acutely aware that Jack was watching her and wondering about her commitment to him and their upcoming marriage, but she'd been very careful. 3 times she'd asked her supervisor for the afternoon off, twice for premarital counseling, and once to keep an appointment with her gynecologist. None of them had been actual appointments, but there'd been no questions raised, and Jack didn't know that she'd left work, or what she'd spent those afternoons doing, or who she'd done it with. Each time after leaving work, she'd gone straight to Charlie's apartment and spent the afternoons doing wild and exciting things in his bedroom. Wild, exciting things and afternoons that Jack would never know about. Denise realized that Charlie wasn't nearly the lover that Jack was, nor was he as physically gifted, but being with someone different excited her. The forbidden nature of their relationship, spending hours together in intimate moments, gave her a thrilling sense of danger. It all felt so exciting and dangerous. When they were together, she gave herself to him completely, exhausting him, and then she would return home to Jack. She'd feel an insane sense of exhilaration when she realized that Jack couldn't tell that she'd just spent the entire afternoon cheating on him and fucking Charlie's nuts dry. As much as she loved Jack, Denise could see her extracurricular sexual activities continuing long after they were married, for years, as long as she was careful. She thought about it and decided it would likely be with someone more physically impressive than Charlie, and perhaps even more so than Jack. Denise had done a lot of online reading, and it was only those who got stupid and careless who got caught, and she made a vow to herself to never let herself get careless. She'd never lose her loving husband or give up the excitement of having a lover to fuck her when Jack wasn't looking. Late Friday morning, she kissed Jack goodbye and told him that she was going to miss being with him. Seeing the look of excitement in her eyes, Jack knew that she was lying. He'd seen that same look when she came home from work 3 different times, like a kid bursting with a wonderful secret. Not one of those nights had she approached him to have sex, and because he'd instinctively suspected what she'd done, he'd made no sexual overtures to her. A feeling of overwhelming sadness came over him because he knew that, as she walked out the door with a noticeable spring in her step, everything he'd hoped for, dreamed of, and planned for with Denise was at its end. As he watched her smile, wave, and drive away from the apartment, he felt something inside of himself that had been beyond beautiful begin to shrivel, wither, and die. Jack's vision suddenly blurred and he felt like crying, like just sitting down and bawling his heart out, but he refused to. He just wouldn't. Using the first knuckle of the index finger on each hand, he swept the tears away, locked his jaws together, and through clamped teeth, he choked out a softly whispered, "Goodbye, Denise. Goodbye, my wife who will never be, because I'll never marry an unfaithful woman." It was an incredible fluke of serendipitous circumstance that a close personal friend of Jack's happened to be drinking coffee at his dining room table by the window of his second-floor apartment when Denise pulled her car into a visitor's parking space on the backside of his apartment building. Ed and Jack knew each other like close brothers because they'd trained together and then served together for 2.5 years in the same unit in the mountains of Afghanistan. It was because of their history and closeness that he knew Denise and she knew him. But he was sure that she didn't know that he'd recently moved to this complex. Even if she did, he knew that she damned well had no business being here or anywhere near this rough neighborhood without Jack, and that fact had Ed's fully focused attention. He'd only just set his cell phone to video and begin recording what he was seeing, when he saw the asshole, Charlie Richardson, pull his car in and park it next to Denise's. He continued recording as Charlie got out of his car and walked to Denise. He pulled her into his arms and gave her a hot kiss, while she wrapped her body around him and tried to outdo his kiss. His big hands were cupping the cheeks of her very firm bubble butt ass, and she was smiling a promise of better things to come, when they reluctantly parted to get her suitcase from her car and put it in the trunk of his car, next to his own 2 suitcases. After Denise closed and locked her car, she quickly went around and got into Charlie's car and they left the lot. But not before Ed who, like Jack, both Special Forces snipers, had zoomed in on Charlie's license plate. They'd been standing no more than 30 feet away from his window, so the iPhone video that Ed shot was crystal clear and detailed. He immediately called Jack and told him what he'd just seen, where her car was, and that he'd gotten a video of the 2 of them making the suitcase transfer, before leaving her car parked in the visitor's parking area of his complex. After hanging up, Ed texted and also emailed the unedited video to Jack. It was crystal clear. Even on the small screen of his phone, Jack recognized Denise and Charlie. He felt heartsick when he saw them kissing and mauling each other. Their comfortable familiarity confirmed that this was far from being their first clandestine meeting. They'd clearly been together enough times that it had become second nature, but now they were making a weekend of it. Jack downloaded the video to a jump drive, burned a couple of video discs, and then played one of them on their 65-inch television screen. It was as if he was standing in Ed's dining room, actually watching Denise and Charlie from his window. Jack felt sick to his stomach. actually seeing it and knowing for certain that Denise was betraying him, and had in fact betrayed him by lying to get to where the video showed her actively betraying him, on her way to a weekend of fucking Charlie. He now had no doubt that she'd already fucked him several times before they planned their weekend getaway. At least 3 of those times being when she'd come home from work with that cat that ate the canary look on her face, and the "I just got fucked but you don't know it" look in her eyes. As those thoughts flashed through his mind, he growled to himself, how the fuck could she ever think that I'm that stupid? All she's done is prove that she's as stupid as he is. Well, I warned them both. Grinding his teeth, Jack left the disc in the player, to use it as a final presentation when Denise returned from her weekend of being Charlie's whore, expecting to pick up where she left off being engaged to get married to Jack. He made another disc to leave in one of the boxes that she'd find packed and ready for her to take her belongings to wherever she's going to live when she learns that she doesn't live here anymore. Unless she wants to fight it and have copies of the disc sent to every one of their friends, co-workers, and family members above the age of 12. On Friday night and Saturday morning, the 4 calls that Jack made to the cell phone that he'd gone to Walmart and bought for Denise went straight to voicemail. When he called Ed, at around noon on Saturday, Denise's car was still parked in the same place and hadn't been moved. In mid-afternoon, Denise finally called and, to explain not answering her phone, she gave Jack a bullshit story about not having cell phone reception at her aunt's house, and said that when she'd driven into town, she was able to get a cell phone service and had seen that he'd called several times and left a half-dozen messages. She told him how much she missed him and that she was looking forward to getting home. Then she said that her aunt wasn't doing that well and that she might not be back Sunday night after all because blah blah blah, but could possibly be staying and not get home until late on Tuesday. Her last words were, "I love you, honey. Here's hoping I see you sooner than Tuesday." By now, Jack was burning. He called another of his friends who owned and operated a roadside emergency repair and towing service. Telling him where her car was, he had him flatbed it back to his complex and place it in her parking space in front of their apartment, just as if it had been parked there. He cursed himself for not having a spare set of keys to the car so he could have driven it back. While her car was being picked up, Jack stopped at Walmart and arranged with the meat department manager to have their night crew save 40 of the heavy-duty boxes that their pre-packaged meats come packed in, saying that he'd pick them up early on Sunday morning. When he came to pick up the boxes, one of the employees wheeled one of the 2 large carts of boxes out to their parking lot and set them on the curb, right next to Jack's van. Jack started removing the partitions from the boxes so he could fit 3 boxes together in a smaller space before loading them into the van that he'd borrowed from his sister. It was the only way he could load and carry all of the 40 boxes in one trip. When he was finished, he used the cart that he'd wheeled the boxes out on to take all the partitions he'd removed back into the store, to the guy who'd brought the other cartload of boxes out to the van. He thanked the guy, who said, "No problem," and that he'd take the coated cardboard partitions to the machine that crushes and packs all their empty boxes. After he'd carried all the boxes into his and Denise's apartment, Jack returned Marilyn's van and went back to the apartment and started packing Denise's shit. He was determined that, by the time she got back, every single thing she owned would be separated from his, boxed and stacked by the door. She called late Sunday afternoon to say that she was sorry, but she'd have to stay with her aunt for at least another day, but more likely 2. She was sorry. She loved him and was looking forward to being back home and in his arms. Jack told her that he understood the situation perfectly and for her to not worry her pretty head about it. Punching the button that ended the call, he continued packing her shit. When Jack was done sorting her stuff from his before packing, boxing, and stacking it, he left 2 bottles of her douche and a morning after pill on a bright red plastic picnic plate, sitting at eye level on top of the box that was closest to the dew, right where she couldn't possibly miss seeing them and understanding their significance. Under the bottles of douche and the morning after pill was a folded note telling her to call Charlie and remind him of what he'd warned him would happen if he didn't leave her alone, and to tell him to buy some good running shoes and start using them, and to pray that they don't wear out before Jack finds him. Denise called twice more during her absence, using the same bullshit story about having no cell phone coverage. Jack let her think she was getting away with snookering him, and each time her calls were short because she said she had to get back because of her aunt, and she was gone to get some more fucking. On Tuesday night, Jack was watching for her arrival from the window of a darkened room. After a very long wait, he was thinking that he should call her and ask how long before she'd be home. She hadn't known that she had no car until she got back to Ed's apartment complex, and so her arrival back at the apartment would certainly be delayed from having to deal with that. Just as he laughed and said, "Fuck her," his phone rang. It was Ed. "Hey, Jack. They pulled in about 10 minutes ago and Denise went nuts when she saw that her car wasn't where she left it. The office is closed and the two people I saw her stop and ask about it in the lot just shook their heads. I guess they gave up on her car because they didn't call the cops to report it stolen. Too bad, that would have been rich. There'd have been a police record of where it was parked, when she parked it, and where it was supposedly stolen from. Anyway, they just pulled out. If he's bringing her straight home, you can expect her in about half an hour. Keep cool and don't do anything stupid." "Okay." Jack thanked his friend and went to take a piss before repositioning himself a few feet back from the darkened window, where he had an unobstructed view of the street for 5 buildings in either direction. It was 9 p.m. on Tuesday night when Denise got back from her long and exciting but tiring weekend of whoring with Charlie, the exciting new local stud with a practiced line of shit, to discover that her car wasn't where she'd left it. A bolt of fear went through her. How was she supposed to explain getting home from her stay with her aunt if she didn't have her car? If her car had broken down or been stolen, why hadn't she called Jack to come and get her? The complex's office was closed, so she couldn't check with them to see if they'd had it towed. The two people they saw in the parking lot knew nothing about her car. "Fuck," she screamed. "Of all things, how can this be happening? What am I going to tell Jack?" Denise was completely off balance, but she had to go home, so she concocted a story of her car having been stolen from a gas station when she stopped to fill up just before she got home. She didn't consider the need for a police report on her supposedly stolen vehicle, nor did Charlie, who had been with her intimately for the past 4.5 days. He even had her engage in intimate acts on the way home, leaving evidence of their encounter when Jack kissed her and welcomed her home. With her stolen car story in mind, she had Charlie drop her off, 2 doors down from the apartment, where she quickly got out of his car and snatched her suitcase from the trunk. She figured that would give Charlie time to drive off before Jack knew she was home and wouldn't see whose car she'd come home in. She grabbed her case and walked slowly to the front door and let herself in, not noticing that her car was parked in its usual space in front of the apartment. What she saw when she swung the door open and stepped into the brightly lighted living room made her heart skip a beat and sink. There were rows of stacked boxes on both sides of the door and, right next to the door, the 2 bottles of her summer's eve. Douche were sitting on a bright red picnic plate on top of one of the stacks of brown boxes, along with what it only took her a couple of seconds to realize was a morning after pill. There was a folded sheet of paper under the bottles and the pill that she took to be a note of condemnation that would explain the boxes. Looking across the box with the pill and the bottles of douche on it, she saw Jack, standing in the dining room doorway with a cold, grim expression on his face. Her heart felt like it dropped through her stomach as she realized that she'd just lost what she valued more than anything she'd ever had. Jack, He cut her off, instantly, in the coldest and hardest voice she'd ever heard, saying, "Denise, don't say a fucking word. Just take your shit and get the fuck out. Go move in with your 4-day weekend fling if he even wants someone who would do what you did. You stayed for 2 extra days, so he must offer something you think is better than what I do. Whatever it is, you decided it was worth staying for those extra days. In any case, it doesn't matter because we're done before you walked out the door. I know you think I'm stupid, but I already knew that you've been fucking him and what your real plans were for this weekend. By the way, I saw how you were walking after Charlie dropped you off. Did your sick aunt have the same problem you seem to have?" Tears of grief were streaming from Denise's eyes as Jack, in a cold, hard, and bitter voice, continued. "Remember the engagement and wedding ring set you loved so much and wanted? I bought it and have it almost paid for, but you can forget about ever wearing it. And just to think, I was going to marry a low-life piece of trash like you. You make me sick. Take your douche and the baby killer pill and get the fuck out of my sight. If he gave you AIDS, I just hope you haven't infected me." Denise started pleading with what she instantly discovered was a cold, stone wall, and then remembered that she'd also lost her car. When she lied, telling him that someone had stolen her car and that she'd had to get a ride home, He said, "You and your fuck buddy Charlie were in such a hurry for him to get gone so I wouldn't see you getting out of his car, that you didn't notice your car sitting in its parking space, did you? I had it picked up and brought back here last Saturday, the day after you parked it in the back lot at Embry Gardens apps. I knew exactly where you left it, on Friday, less than a minute after he helped you pull your bag from your car and put it in his trunk. So I knew who you left with, and I even have his car's plate number. Would you like to watch the video of you climbing all over him and kissing him while he grabbed you and pulled you close before putting your suitcase in his trunk? The way you were grinding against him, I'm surprised you didn't go further right there on the hood of your car in the parking lot. Just seeing the way you were acting, I knew that trip wasn't the first time the two of you had been together. Not by a long shot. You must have been with each other a dozen times or more before planning that little getaway. And now you say your car was stolen, while you were up in no cell phone coverage country. You're a real sweetheart, and I'm the idiot who trusted you, the fool who loved you and was going to marry you next month, 3 weeks from now. I'm sorry, Jack, she wanted to reply. Shut up, I said. Have someone call and arrange to pick up your shit. I don't want to see you and I don't want to hear your voice. Don't say another goddamned word, just get out right now before I get justice. A couple of months had passed and one night, Jack was finished having dinner with 2 friends in a restaurant. They were having coffee and talking when, out of nowhere, Denise approached him. Jack looked at her coldly and told her to go away, that he didn't want to look at her or hear her voice. He was done, and so was she. Still pleading, she asked him for 5 minutes to talk and began apologizing for what she did, telling him that she'd made a terrible mistake, that she'd gotten carried away with the guy's line of bullshit. Since she was spewing their personal life in front of his 2 friends, Jack coldly reminded her that good time Charlie had been allowed to enjoy fucking her several more times and had spent 2 more long weekends in her saddle before he dumped her for another hot dumb woman, just like her, and has already dumped her too. And now she's on the outside looking at the divorce papers from the faithful husband that she was cheating on. Then Jack asked, "But what if that asshole hadn't dumped you or I hadn't found out about you fucking him? Would you even be here today talking to me apologizing for what you did? Hell no, you wouldn't. You'd still be sneaking around behind my back, being intimate with him before coming home and telling me how much you love me, wouldn't you?" Denise, I totally loved you. You know I did, but you destroyed us. I warned you about that guy multiple times, once while holding your shoulders and looking straight into your eyes, but you chose to be with him anyway. I can't believe you have the nerve to come here today. After what you did, do you really think I'm stupid? You have to know there's no way I could ever trust you again, not after what you did. Even if I didn't catch you again, I'd always be waiting for the next time you wanted to be with someone else. After getting caught this time, I know you'd just be more careful, but sooner or later I'd catch you. If you had loved me to begin with, you would never have risked losing me by being with him. But you did. You took a chance because what you were after was worth more to you than losing me was. You were willing to gamble on losing me and my love for you because he has money, expensive cars, and no respect for anyone else. You gave up what we had for a chance at money and excitement. How does it feel to stand there knowing you'll never be loved, held, or made love to by me again? Never. Not ever. Denise was sobbing, pitifully as I continued. As much as I still love you and ache for you, I'll never put my heart, love, and trust at risk with you again. I can't afford to and you don't deserve it. Even if I never caught you, I know that, sooner or later, you'd see a golden opportunity and use it to piss on me again. As Denise sat there weeping, Jack said, I know I've done all the talking, but are the 5 minutes up yet? Yes. She barely choked out and then, in a broken voice, added, I'm so sorry, Jack. I won't bother you again. Then she began to cry like a lost soul. Slowly, Jack stood up from the table, apologized to his friends for leaving early and, without looking back, walked away and out of the restaurant. In the early morning hours, 4 months later, Charlie's barely recognizable body was found draped over the edge of the dumpster behind a ritzy restaurant. The local news reported police officials as saying that he'd been viciously beaten to death and that early indications were that the vicious killing had been methodical and intentional. Most likely done by a professional because Mr. Richardson still had a thick roll of cash in his pocket, an expensive wristwatch, his cell phone, and a wallet filled with black and gold credit cards. Charlie had earned a reputation as a womanizer who didn't care whose girlfriend or wife he pursued. However, due to his family's influence and power, he had been considered one of the untouchables. As the news segment ended, the reporter solemnly stated, "Unfortunately, family wealth and power don't shield anyone from the Grim Reaper." Charlie's murder was never solved, but as a result of that newscast, it was commonly referred to as the Grim Reaper killing. At the funeral home, there was one large black lily among all the flowers that were delivered with a card signed, "Grim Reaper," that read, "Charlie, you're now where you belong. Only you know that I was the last to see you alive and ask, was she worth this price, worth losing 40 or 50 years of your life? This beating is my personal payback, but it's merely a down payment on your long overdue debt. Before I looked into your eyes and said, 'Goodbye, Charlie,' it's your turn on the shit end of the stick." Jack had parked his rental car on the outside of the cemetery gates and been standing there, watching the ceremony from the far side of the car. From his chosen location, he had a clear view to the burial plot. When the preacher had finished with his pious once upon a times, hereafters, ever afters, Jack's eyes stayed focused on the box until it disappeared into the ground. With a smile as grim and as cold as his eyes, he thought, "I wonder if she ever told him to buy that pair of running shoes. After what happened to Charlie, I wonder if she's thinking of buying a pair for herself." And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.